The place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, September 23rd,
Place to be
2023.
is
Ooh,
living
we're going to
free,
get the music twice today
living
because
free in
every so often
Tennessee.
that just plays twice just for the fun of it. Anyway, September 22nd, 2023. This is episode 795 of Living Free in Tennessee, and it's a Friday, so it's a Homestead Happenings Day. And we've had all sorts of new babies. If you were following me on social media, you saw all the cute little baby lamb pictures this week. And I was sort of talking through on our social networks about like how we're choosing, because somebody else raises St. Croix in our network. And I was talking about like maybe trading out rams or ewes or something so that we keep our genetics strong. And somebody else in the comments said, "Hey, I'd really like to hear how you're making that decision." And so it's kind of a funny this discussion that I've had with Tactical because we both came to totally opposite conclusions. But that's okay. I'm going to talk through kind of how we talked that through today as the primary content of the show. Would love to hear your feedback in the comments. And I just want to say welcome to Janet, One Step Closer, Letty, Beth, John Davis. Hello. And Autumn Dawn, who I bought the sheep from. So she's probably going to have some things to say about this too. And Facebook user is here, which is often Michael Sparks, but I don't know if that's you or not today. So you're anonymous on my feed. Drinking some delicious hollow roast coffee from this Calamity Ware mug this morning, which I woke up all week. The last couple days, I've felt really kind of not so good physically when I wake up. Like nothing bad, high pipinized, nothing terrible, but just sort of a little achy. I don't know why. And so today, when I was sitting in bed going, I don't want to get up because my body hurts today, I was like, I'm going to use my Calamity Ware mug and I'm going to get up and I'm going to enjoy my coffee. I'm going to take my Stamets mushrooms and I'm going to get a walk in today. I might even drive to the pool. That's actually probably fallen off the list, but it might not have. I don't usually swim on Fridays, but I'm like, maybe I need to swim some laps. It's like the rowing isn't just going to do it. Anyway, if you are watching this live today and you have a question or comment, put the first word or two in all caps and I'll mark it and try to build it in and or address your question at the end of the show. Hello, Hack My Homestead and Homestead Medical. And we're just going to dive in today. So let's start with it's all about lamb husbandry, getting ready for fall, all the good stuff that we're doing. That's what today's show is about. Rwanda Revolution is yum. That's actually what I'm drinking too. So Hack My Homestead was here earlier this week working on the solar system. And he's like, I want one of the Renegade Rwanda pounds. And I was like, well, I just happen to have a pound of dark. And there was just a little bit left. So that ended up coming inside for my coffee today. And I have had some issues with the flavors of coffee changing a little bit because my roaster had an element out and I didn't know it. So it was raising the temperature slower. So I'm QCing this. QCing in air quotes, by the way. But it is pretty good. I'm enjoying it today too. It doesn't taste as good with the mushrooms in there. I don't know about y'all, but if you take like the 7 mushroom blend it's like antioxidants and all those things. If you take that in your coffee, I actually can taste it. Other people can't taste it, but I can taste it. So it's like I have that first cup with it and it's good, but I can taste the mushroom flavor. And then the second one, I'm like, yes, this is my pure coffee. This is my perfect coffee. And Renegade Rwanda is this month's coffee of the month, in case you wonder what we're talking about. So I sent an email out to everybody on the Hollow Roast email list about the coffee this week, just like this is this month's coffee of the month. And it's produced from farms where women have taken over management of the farm after Civil War in their country, because one of the things that happened to the men was they were dismembered, like their hands were cut off and made them harder for them to work on the farm, and the women had to step up and do it. And so where we source our beans are from there's a women's cooperative, and that's where we source them. And they're very delicious. So also Civil War is horrible and we don't want one. Okay, before we jump into the content, I do want to talk about the featured event of today's show, and it is Sunday at 4 p.m. I am speaking in Spencer at a mag that was put together by Bradley Bleasdale. And he's really interested in keeping things kind of focused local. He says he has a lot of people that come to that already. So if you're hearing this and going, I want to go see that, find your local Freedom Cell or your local Homesteaders Alliance or your local mutual assistance group or your local ham radio group or something nearby. Invest time in going to check out what that's like. Because part of why I'm speaking there is to talk about the power of community and underground networks. And one of the things that I've been pretty purposeful about this year is putting my time in getting out of my little bubble here in the Holler Homestead where I really like to stay and going to some of these events that are outside the norm. And I'm doing that so that we can, because you have all these pods of communities and they overlap. And as we develop relationships with each other, it's amazing how much stronger the connection and the network gets. And a lot of people are like, how am I going to cover all my stuff locally if like shipping systems break down or whatever? Well, the answer to that is we're not going to have all the things at the same prices that we have them now available at the snap of a finger. Because even with the delay in productions that we've had, like in, like the scarcity of some items, sort of that floating scarcity thing we've had since 2020, you still get your stuff and you still get it pretty fast. Like I had to wait 6 months for elements for my roaster, but if you think about what that would have been like 200 years ago, it might have been longer. So we have survived without instant on-demand access to anything we could possibly think of in the past. And if things broke down, we would survive again. Because if you really think about covering your basic needs, you don't need electricity. I hate to tell you this, most of you. Some of you probably do for life, but most of you don't. It's just super uncomfortable if you don't have it because a lot of people rely on electricity for heating and cooling and all of those other things. So when you start thinking about these things, don't think about covering everything. Think about like, how do I cover basic needs? Do I already have what I need? Like you can already cook on your camp stove if you have a camp stove. Well, maybe I'll get a few extra things of fuel. I'm thinking about all of this because a lot of the conversations I've had this week in that network have involved statements that start with when SHTF, not if SHTF, when. And that's a very different mindset than I have. I don't have the mindset that it's inevitable that SHTF because it is not inevitable. A. B. S may have already HTF in 2020 in case you didn't notice, right? So SHTF does not necessarily look like your post-apocalyptic prepper porn books. It might just look like big things happened and some things changed. And you can learn a lot from the 2020 to 22 time period about what happens in our society now when things are not just running the way everybody expects them to. And from that's where you take your wisdom to build a more resilient life that also moves you forward if S doesn't HTF. Because what are you going to do if all you did was prepare for SHTF and then it doesn't? And it doesn't. I tell this story. I know somebody who thought S was going to HTF and sold everything they owned, moved out away from everybody, didn't work, but worked on building bushcraft and hunting and a whole bunch of other stuff, and ended up completely broke, having spent all the money from the house sale they had with no job on friends' sofas, finally starting to earn money again. And that person has built their life back, but they went through a very unnecessary reset by going all in on SHTF. And it's on my mind this week because I got pretty down on Wednesday when I realized that we have people in our community who are counting on SHTF. And I'm like, how have you listened to me for like this long and you're still counting on it? Like we're in it. We're in it. It happened. It might happen again. It might happen more. More things might go south. But when we're together, we get through those things better. So I love it. And I've got one all caps thing to tag into. Okay. So that's my random aside. That's totally not on topic of today's show, but hopefully we'll have some good shorts out of that one, right? I also want to thank today's show sponsors. StrongRootsResources.com is a great place to go if you want A consultation from somebody who knows what they're doing on the land, brings permaculture in, and specializes in smaller properties. He also is really good, Kerry Brown, also really good at identifying wild edible plants. In fact, he is doing the wild edible plant walks at the Self-Reliance Festival this time. He will geolocate those on your property. I might actually have him come do that here, even though he showed me a few things here, because we do a wild edible plant walk at my spring workshop every spring, and he's the one who does it. I think it's pretty cool because he'll wander around. He'll find that wild blueberry bush. He will tag it, right? Tag it. And then you have a map and you can go find it yourself too. He'll also show it to you if you want him to. Anyway, he's a sponsor of the show, been a good friend of Living Free in Tennessee for a long time. If you are looking for that or other advice, check him out at strongrootsresources.com or go see him in person at the Self-Reliance Festival. I think he's at Back to the Land Festival this weekend as well. Second sponsor of today's show is Discount Mylar Bags. If you want to store food, we just talked about SHTF. If you want to store food the right way, go to discountmylarbags.com. On the right-hand corner, you will see a bunch of resources that Toby's put together on how to store food, how to store it successfully, and sizes of bags. And then on the site, you can get some of the best prices on Mylar bags available because Toby's really good at sourcing things in bulk and then passing on the lower costs to his customers. That's over at discountmylarbags.com. They have also been a friend of the show for a very long time. Finally, if you want to reach out to me or give a comment or whatever, you can. Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com or go to livingfreeintennessee.com and click on contact. And I do get those emails. And sometimes I don't reply to them, but I do read them. You know, sometimes there's a lot, or sometimes there's not much for me to say. So I don't. Anyway, okay, we're going to get into the first usual segment of a Friday show, and that is a forage. And today, this week, so when I talk about forage, I just talk to you about what I'm seeing when I'm outside. And the weeks where I'm traveling a lot, not here, I don't have a lot to say about forage unless Tactical has something to say about forage. But I can say that our split of knowledge is that he's super focused on forage for animals, and I'm super focused on other forage like that we eat, that we use in herbal remedies and that sort of thing. And every year when I'm walking, like some plant will pop out and I'll be like, who are you? And then I learn a new plant, and that's kind of fun. Actually, I haven't learned this year's new plant, but I am very curious about what it is. We've got jewelweed blooming right now, and pretty soon that's going to be gone. Jewelweed is something that makes a great salve, or you can use it fresh on poison ivy and helps that heal. If you get exposed to poison ivy and you're not breaking out in a rash and you're washing, if you can also wash with, like, rub some jewelweed on it and then wash that can help counteract the allergic reaction you're about to have if you are allergic to it. You will also find that jewelweed, in Tennessee anyway, often grows near poison ivy, and it can choke poison ivy out. So one strategy for getting rid of poison ivy, besides goats, is to plant jewelweed nearby and hope that it helps choke it out. We have poison ivy on my property, but we have been working to get less and less of it here. I'm not allergic to it. So every time I've talked on the show about having poison ivy and being frustrated that jewelweed does not work, it's because I am allergic to the wisteria. You know, that beautiful wisteria vine that takes over the world? It has pretty purple cluster flowers that look like a cluster of grapes, only it's flowers. Yeah, that stuff I'm allergic to. Jewelweed won't touch that rash, just for the record. And comfrey doesn't do a terribly good job. And steroids work really well, and thyme works really well. So I'm not a steroid taker, but I have a steroid cream that I used once and it worked really well. I was like, so when I have a lot of this, I use that cream. Anyway, jewelweed will be not available anymore soon. It works better fresh than as a salve. It works better as a salve than if you've frozen it and then made a salve. So that's just my non-scientific observation from other people who get poison ivy and use my jewelweed and my jewelweed salve and my jewelweed salve that was made from jewelweed that was frozen. So if you're going to do this, you got to go get jewelweed now. Make your salve now. fact, maybe we should do an episode on how to make salad. Does that sound good? I'll do a little segment on that on Monday if I remember. Hopefully I remember. Passion fruit is on the vine. So I learned over the weekend with the Homesteader Alliance meetup we did here. I think it was 2 weeks ago now, or was it last week? I don't even know. Everything's a blur. That's 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago? Yeah. Passion fruit. Passion flower, the leaves and the flower make a tea that can help you sleep better at night. I had no idea. So that was cool. But I knew the passion fruit was tasty. So it's kind of a lemony, citrusy flavor, and it has a lot of seeds. So a lot of people don't like to deal with that. But I'm one of those people when the wild whatever edible comes on and I find it, I'm like, I'm gonna have one of those or two of those this year right now. And I come from the standpoint that when we're eating things in season, that there may be a reason that it's in season right then. So I will do that from time to time when we have them. And actually over at base camp at Steve and Tracy's house, they have a really robust passion flower vine going. So that's pretty cool. I'd like to cultivate some here. In fact, I may make it the vining layer on one of my trees in the food forest. I have a couple of plants that were left behind by the lady who did, Tatiana, who did the presentation on herbal remedies here 2 weeks ago. And that was really awesome. Okay. We also are on sort of the last harvesting round of some of the fresh herbs that I know will be beat back by the frost, including mint and oregano and thyme if I have any still alive. I'll probably get some rosemary. I have 1 or 2 rosemary plants of the 20 I planted that are still alive. So we'll see. I'm going to mulch the crap out of them this winter and hope they overwinter. Yarrow, passion flower, comfrey, stinging nettle, blackberry leaves, lemon balm, all that stuff. If I want it dried in my teas or dried for medicinal purposes, I'm getting it now. If I want to make a tincture, I'm making my tinctures now. I've already made my goldenrod tincture for like the next 400 years. So don't need to do that. But goldenrod is everywhere right now in Tennessee. So if you need to make yours, get on it, man. Get on it. And then I am mentally marking and may physically mark a few places where I have seen Jerusalem artichoke growing. I have some in my garden that will never die. And then, because I've tried to get them out, you try to get every root bit out. And then the next year you're like, oh, well, there's a Jerusalem artichoke again. And then I've got Jerusalem artichokes from those artichokes that I transplanted. And those are a cultivated version rather than the wild ones. So then I'll also mark the wild ones around here. But the cultivated ones give me slightly bigger roots to eat. I mark them now because what will happen is the first frost will come by, they'll drop their leaves, and then if you don't know where they are, you don't know where they are. So you want to know where they are, you can tie a little, like one of those plastic ribbons on it or whatever, mark them however you want to mark them. And then you know where to dig later when it's time to get the roots. Because right now they're blooming. And then they're going to put their energy into the roots. And that's when it builds out and becomes the thing that you eat. So you'll start eating those October, November, all the way into spring where they start putting up shoots again. And then all that energy from the roots go out. And if you dig the roots in the spring when the plant is up, they're hollow. Then you're not eating the roots. Now, I don't know why they're called Jerusalem artichoke. We should totally look into that sometime too. Because they do not look like artichokes. They do not act like artichokes. They are not artichokes. They are not a thistle. They are more like a sunflower sort of family thing. But the roots do, like when you mix them with butter and cook them, they do kind of taste like artichoke hearts, maybe. They have the mouthfeel of a combination of an artichoke heart and a potato, so it's not quite either. But I like to have them at Thanksgiving if I have enough to harvest. And you can grate them on salads, but they will give you gas. And so you might want to do that on a day when you're not sleeping with your significant other. Otherwise, you're going to have like farts under the sheets, which nobody likes. That's why they're called fartichokes. But once you cook them, there is a lower gas factor in them. And that's sort of the things I saw while walking out and about. I've seen some posts about persimmons. I haven't seen any persimmons here, but in order to see the persimmons, I got to go to the top of the hill. We didn't find any viable wild mushrooms. I think that Tactical may have found a dryad saddle in the old pig pasture. And the word there that's key to listen to is think. So the bottom side of that mushroom has, like, instead of gills, it has little pores, like little circular things. And usually when it's blooming, it has sort of a scaly pattern on top. This one didn't have that scaly pattern. And so I was like, well, that's either one that's past its prime or it's not one. And either way, we're not going to eat it. I did smell it, and it didn't smell like watermelon either. So I'm kind of thinking it's not, but don't know. Don't know. So this is the first week in a couple weeks we haven't found wild mushrooms. It did rain. Usually what happens, so like right now it's sunny and it's a little cooler, and then it rains and then all the mushrooms come out. So I really should get my butt up into the woods this weekend if I can find some time to do that. By find time, I mean make time. And then go see which mushrooms are there, if any of my like oyster mushroom places have it. Because once you start finding wild mushrooms, you have your wild mushroom places. And this year, having found chicken of the woods for the first time, I was super excited. I also have the day marked that we found it. So next year around that time, we'll start looking for chicken. I'm guessing had I gone up in the woods and really looked at some of the oak trees that are not looking too good, that I would have found more, but maybe not. Who knows? Okay, next segment is livestock, and we are going to get into the husbandry discussion today about sheep. And I see John Davis is here, who they also raise St. Croix, and I'm like, we need to do some genetics trades or buy from each other or something. So we'll get into that in this segment. And I am fairly new to this, so I'm going at it maybe not from an expert level, which means I don't know how far to the edge I can go. But before we talk about that, chickens who are in the Holler Roost compost yard / Victory Garden system we set up this year have figured out that they can fly over the fence. So we're going to need to clip their wings. However, I also have way too many roosters and they need to be processed. And I kind of feel like once the roosters are processed, we're going to have less of the flyover problem because it's mostly the boys that are flying over. And for context, I got a straight run rather than specific genders because the source I got it from did not have a gendering option. And I ended up with a lot more boys than girls. I ended up with all white ones, and I'm looking to add, I know this is not ideal for American breasts. Like, apparently it's cool when they're white. I like variety, guys. I like color variety in my chickens too. So ones that are not all white for roosters, I'm looking to switch out roosters. My hair just got in my mouth. So between now and Self-Reliance Festival, very busy. In fact, the whole month of October, I'm never home for a weekend. So I'm not sure how we're getting this done. I'm not processing them right now, even though we could, because of the time investment that will take. So I don't know. I think we're just going to deal with the fact that the little buggers are going over the fence unless like the Holler neighbors magically organize themselves to process these chickens. Because I just, with Mama Sauce not doing operations for Self-Reliance Festival, it's taking a lot more of my time. Like I spent about 10 hours yesterday on details of Self-Reliance Festival. And that was a lot of time. And I still have another 10 hours I should put in today. We'll see. I mean, I don't think I'm going to achieve 10 hours today, but I am going to achieve one benchmark that's very important to me. So that's how that's going. No days off between now and SRF. And I'll probably take some midweek days off in October just so I don't get sick, because I'm also trying very hard not to get sick. Okay. We really need to process rabbits. Same thing. I'm hoping that Nighthawk and Tactical will do that on Saturday. The cool thing about processing rabbits is that because they're mostly for dog food here right now and not for our consumption, not that we don't eat rabbits, we just don't need any right now in the freezer. They don't need to do anything other than dispatch and bag them and freeze them. So, because we feed the dogs the whole rabbit with the fur, with the guts, everything. Last time we cut them in half, because you get a half rabbit a day if you're a dog around here. But that was gross. And it was easier to package them as whole rabbits. So now I'm like, just put them in Ziplocs. Don't even vacuum seal them because it's not even worth it. But it's, like 30 rabbits is 30 days of food for 2 dogs here. So, and we need to process about 30 rabbits, 27. Anyway, the new baby sheep came. And this is something, you guys, I've been talking about it like, on and off, on and off, on and off. It's like, they're going to come. They're going to come. They're going to come. And then they didn't. And I'm like, I'm watching these udders get bigger and bigger. And what happens with sheep is 4 to 6 weeks before an udder arrives. And it looks big to you because you aren't used to seeing an udder on the ewe. And then you're like, okay, time is near. And then you kind of have them on delivery watch, and then they don't. And then about the week of, like, all of a sudden, it's, like, really big udder, and you're like, "Okay, now it's time." So we had the now it's time moment last week. I talked about it on Homestead Happenings. And over the weekend, Bruni gave birth to a boy, and we named him Lamb Chop, and I put a picture out, and I was able to catch him, and he was not as vigorous as the other girl lambs who have been born here, and I don't know I don't know why. I don't know if boys are just sort of lazier or what the deal was because it's our first male that's been born here. But I caught him and looked him over, and I was a little worried he wasn't getting enough milk because when they nurse, their little tails go when they get milk, and I'd see him nurse, and his tail would go for a little while and then not keep going. Well, okay, we're a week later. Nursing is going fine. We don't have mastitis in mom. He is a lot more vigorous now. And it may have just been that he was born the second I saw him. Like, I don't even know. I don't think that's true, though. It could be just that lamb. I don't see any indication of problems. And I double checked with Dawn, who I bought them from. I'm like, we don't have because we don't know who his father is. We don't have a risk that the wrong, like, there's a genetic. No, we don't. So that's good. So I was like, is Floki related to Bruni? And she was like, nope. And I was like, sweet. That solves a problem for me. And I had to ask her because I put a packet of their genetics in the filing system somewhere. I'm looking at it. And I was wanting to prepare how we do the husbandry or how we've been talking about the husbandry here. And then I relied on her memory because finding that paperwork in the half hour I had before this show wasn't going to work for me. I got to go through the files, but I need to go through the files and like update forms and who is related to who so that I know for the long term. But that's our next thing. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we make decisions about who we eat, who we trade, and who we keep for making lamb futures. Like when a girl is born, that's a lamb future. Like, are we going to eat her or not? So the rule of thumb around here has been don't eat the girls because then they make more lambs in about a year and a half, right? And the way we are approaching reproduction here is we are waiting until a ewe is a year old before she is exposed to a lamb, even though they can get pregnant younger. We don't want them to because we want their bodies to be developed so that things go smoother. So that's one. So girls, we keep. Except we have rams producing girls, and I don't really want father rams reproducing with daughters. So that adds a layer of complication. And I would prefer not to have sons getting mothers pregnant, although as I was reading online, that's something that sheep farmers accept as okay. Like with humans, when you have too many interbred animals or generations, you can bring out recessive traits that are undesirable. So that's sort of the framework. Because I am not a sheep husbandry expert, and because I don't really know, like, how do I breed for a specific trait, which is when you would want to breed. And because I don't have a huge flock that I'm willing to have more failures from. Like, I want successful, strong genetics out of my relatively small flock of sheep. I'm not playing that breed for desirable traits by inbreeding game. Not what I'm going to do right now. Maybe someday in the future I'll change my mind and I'll go down that road, but that's not the road I want to go down. So the way we chose from the original flock who went to the butcher was partially if it was a Croy-Todden, which meant a St. Croix that mixed with a Katahdin and male, it went to the processor. If at any time in the first 6 months of living at the Haller homestead, we had to intervene to save its life. Like, we had to deal with bloat, we had to deal with an illness, whatever. It went to the processor. And the way we knew that is when we did an intervention, we put a dog collar on them to catch them and then helped them, right? So we had one get an infection in its brain that we did use antibiotics to keep it alive. That one is one that we ate here after I was confident the antibiotics were out of its system. That's not one we sold. We sold other ones. And there was one in particular I kind of wanted to keep that looked a lot like Floki, but he had bloat problems. And so he also had a choking problem once. So I just decided that is not something we want to pass on. And everybody who came out here and did fine is still here. We also didn't want to keep more than 2 rams. We did keep 3 rams originally because there were such good genetics in Henry. But Henry was a jerk. He was an AH jerk, right? I'm making this show so that you can, play it in front of your kids. So Henry was super sweet and he'd let you pet him and he was a St. Croix and he had good genetics to pass on. And every so often he'd get a wild hair and charge you and want to bump you off your feet, which if you knew Henry, that didn't happen to you because you looked at him and he was like, oh, yeah, he caught me. Or he'd charge you and you step to the side and slap him out of the way. Well, Henry charged one of my farm sitters from across the pasture. And she was like, I'm not coming back to deal with your sheep because that was dangerous. And I'm lucky that he did not hit me because I saw it coming. And I'm like, yeah, fair. He went to the processor. It was a hard decision for me because I had already decided that he was going to stay. And then I was like, yeah. And then we also kept a ram named Brownie who had the genetics of the ewe that we lost the first week that they came here. And I was really wanting to keep her genetics going. So I put him together with Bruni and they never did the deed. They never successfully made sheep. But on the day I brought him in, there was sheep chaos, and apparently he nailed, I think it was Amy, who's one of the Katahdins, and so his genetics live in her. So that's when we had the coldest night of the winter, not quite, but a very cold night of the winter birth of a lamb. So I had to make a visual aid for myself to do this, but yesterday or the day before, I'm talking to Tactical about if we just right now. We've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 8 females. So we've had almost all females and 1 male this year from all of the sheep that were born. And Tactical's ideal herd size right now is 7 females and a ram or 2. And then we eat everybody else to just sort of keep it cycling. And based on what has happened now, the 2 rams we have are in this upper right hand. Is it right on your screen or left, guys? Let me know. Because on my screen, it's on the right. But sometimes video does that reverse thing. So on the right hand for me, it's probably the left hand for you. Let me know. Are 2 ram icons. And that is Floki and Timmy. That's the 2 boys we have right now. So they are both St. Croix. And then our original females. Okay, so it's on the right. Good. On the left, we have the 3 original females. So we have Amy, who's a Katahdin, Allie, who's a Katahdin, and Brunhilde or Bruni, who's a St. Croix. Now, Bruni and Timmy and Floki are not related to each other. Floki is my favorite ram in the whole world and has been the whole time, and I really like him. He has a sweet demeanor. He has strong genetics. Timmy got to stay because of his demeanor. Like, we were going to send him to the butcher, and then we're like, actually, Timmy, we like you. We like you better than Henry. We're going to keep you around just in case. And sure enough, Henry had to go. So that's the original 3. Now, last year, we had a sheep born named Cloudy who was female, and that's in the upper left. So Amy had crossed with we don't know who, and it could be any of the many boys that were there because Cloudy was conceived in the middle of the summer when sheep are not fertile. Sheep don't read books. And we became aware she was pregnant in the middle of the going into winter, and we're like, okay, well, they're over here. So we had this moving shelter. We were moving around with her on my property the whole time. And Cloudy was born. Amy gave birth to 2 girls. One girl didn't make it, problem in birthing. And I don't know if I had known more about how to help in the situation if we could have brought that one back, because sometimes they're born quote unquote dead, but you can bring them back. I tried heating it up. I didn't shake it upside down to see if there was anything in the airway. Mom had already given up on it, when it happened. So not sure what happened there, but Cloudy is of unknown origin, which means these 2 rams could be the father of Cloudy. So the 2 on the right could be the father of Cloudy, which means we would prefer they do not mate with Cloudy, who is going to be ready for a ram in January, February. Okay, Allie crossed with Brownie. Brownie has desirable genetics. Allie's a Katahdin. And we got Khaki and Red. We got twin girls. They're very vibrant. So because we know for 100% sure certainty that the St. Croix named Brownie also crossed with the Katahdin. So we have Croix-Tahdins right now, right? Females. Either of these St. Croix sheep can, in fact, breed with Khaki and Red, as well as Amy and Allie, and make offspring that we're happy with. It does not preserve the 100% St. Croix line if we do it this way, because these are Croix-Tahdins, but we're looking at meat production right now. And these 2 girls are vibrant, great ladies, like them. They are not ready to breed yet. Okay, Brunhilde, who's a St. Croix, crossed with either Floki or Timmy. We don't know who. I'm guessing Floki right now, based on how the ram looks, but I could be wrong. And because they're both St. Croix and she's a St. Croix, we have Lamb Chop, a male, 100% St. Croix. Now, who can Lamb Chop breed with in the future? Lamb Chop can breed with Amy, but not Cloudy, because we don't know who Cloudy's father is. So Lamb Chop's father could be Cloudy's father too. Don't want to do that, brother, sister. Lamb Chop can breed with Allie, who crossed with Brownie, and it made Khaki and Red. So Lamb Chop can breed with Khaki and Red, no problem. Lamb Chop cannot breed with Bruni, because that's his mother. But these 2 can breed with Bruni. See where I'm going there? Okay. Now, we also have Amy has had a second batch of twins from either Floki or from Timmy, right? I just used those 2 ram heads as one because we just don't know who did it. And we have 2 girls, Rack and Rib. Right now, their names are Rack and Rib because I thought of boy names, Rack and Rib, because we were going to process them if they were males. And now we have 2 girls. Now, Lamb Chop should not mate with Rack or Rib because they could be sisters. And these 2 should not mate with Rack or Rib because one of them's the father. So my thought was, as hard as it is, if I get rid of these 2 rams and replace them with new rams that are St. Croix, the rams can screw whoever they want. But I really like Floki. Tactical also really likes Floki. So then I was like, well, we could change out Timmy, and then Floki can mate with Amy. Floki can mate with Allie, Khaki and Red. Floki can mate with Bruni, and Lamb Chop is male. And then Floki cannot mate with Rack or Rib. And so then we have a second ram from somebody else who can. And we just do it that way. And then Tactical was like, yeah, but I really like these rams. They get along together. They're not, killing each other. So when we separate them, they have 2 and they're buddies, right? And the other way we can do this is that we get rid of female. So Cloudy goes, Rack and Rib goes. If we get rid of these 3 ewes, then we can keep these 2 rams, and we replace the 2 of the 3 ewes to get up to 7, and we end up with these 2 rams and we also process lamb chop. That means that these 2 rams can then breed with anybody again, or we process them, right? We process, like Cloudy could process right now, and then that would be fine. The other thing I could do is get a genetic test, but I'm on a small homestead and I'm not going to do that. So those are the 2 options we're looking at. There are other options. Here's the deal. We don't want to have to separate the 2 rams into different pools of females. That's what Tactical told me. And because he's the one who does the majority of the fencing and keeping track of multiple things when we have them in 2 places, I have to agree with his, I don't want to do it that way, because what I would have done is probably just separate who goes with who. I think now we're leading towards either processing, selling, or trading Cloudy, processing or selling Rack and Rib, processing lamb chop, keeping the 2 rams, and getting 2 other females in. My hesitation on getting anybody new in is that we do not use antibiotics. We do not do anything for parasites. We just rotate them, and we don't have vaccinations. And so if we bring somebody in, I'm concerned about having a situation like Carrie has, where they're not as parasite resistant as they need to be here. I do have the infrastructure to keep them separate for a month to just make sure nothing happens. But the risk you take when you bring new animals on is that you end up with a risk of diseases that you did not have on your property before. And the other thing I'm thinking about doing, and I was talking to John Davis, who was in the comments here, is trading out Timmy for another St. Croix just to see, just because. But Timmy's fine. So I don't know. We'll see. So our decision's not made, but I think right now Tactical's leading towards Rack and Rib and Cloudy get replaced with 2 females, and it's either that we just process them and sell them as meat, or use them for meat, or we in fact, we could process Cloudy at the Self-Reliance Festival instead of a pig. I could talk to the butchers about that. Anyway, that's where we're coming from. So there was a moment when we're like, well, we'll keep Lamb Chop and get rid of Timmy, and then Lamb Chop can have sex with everybody here except for his mom, pretty much, and Rack and Rib are also, and Cloudy. So, it's like, okay. So what's fun about this conversation is, like, you see how all the circles happen, right? But our end goal is strong genetics and not needing to keep this ram or that ram with this set of girls or that set of girls. And I'll let you know where we go from here. And John, yes, I will reply to your email, because the other thing is, where are we going to source the strong genetics? So that's how we have those discussions on the homestead. I hope that helps those of you who are newer to the husbandry thing. Baby ducks, the youngest baby ducks are now roaming the yard free, and that's pretty cool. And they are more timid than the ones that we hatched from our own eggs, and we will see. I'm hoping that we can combine them with all the ducks over the weekend, but that may not happen with the way they're sort of how they're acting. So I want to make sure everybody's sort of comfortable in the yard before they go to bed in the same place at night. And I would expect within the week they'll be all in one place. My goal is to have that happen before we have a farm sitter in for Self-Reliance Festival, so that their life is easier and there are fewer places that need food and water. Finally, speaking of livestock, I was in the garden yesterday and all of a sudden my feet hurt. They were burning. You know why they were burning? Because I stepped on fire ants. When I moved here, we did not have fire ants, and I was so happy about it. Like, they were more to the south of us, and I was like, maybe the bodies of water that surround me are keeping the fire ants out. and then they arrived, and now they're in my garden. So we're doing some fire ant remediation. I have to order in the anti-fuego orange oil that you dump on them that melts their exoskeletons but doesn't hurt your plants. Gonna do that. But also just we have a lot of in between where the garden beds are. We have a lot of tall weeds right now, and we're gonna beat those back so I can see. Because the reason I stepped on them is I could not see the fire ants, and then they were all over my feet, and I was wearing sandals. I'm usually barefoot in the garden. I was super unhappy with the whole situation. I said words. Tactical said he heard me saying words and didn't know what was going on. And I'm like, that's what was going on. It's like once I thought, every time I thought I had the stupid fire ants off my feet, like I'm doing this dance, like, word. Every time I was doing that, like I get them all off and then there'd be one more. And so, unlike Letty, I'm not allergic to fire ants. I am allergic to honeybees, but it's a different venom, I guess, that fire ants have. And I had one place that took the night to go down in swelling, and everything else was pretty much done. But my goal is to keep those critters at least out of the garden space to the best of my ability. And they were really into my green bean row that I was picking. So I think like those green beans are near the end of their life. I think probably the sugar content has gone up. And so they were super interested in doing that. Somebody in the Joker list says baking soda and icing sugar mixed together as in equal amounts and run through a sifter works extremely well on ants of all stripes, including flying ants. Yeah, the fire ants, the only one gender flies, right? Isn't it the male who flies, or is it the female? I can't remember. But yeah, these ants were not flying ants, but they sucked. It sucked. Okay, next segment's Homestead Meals. This is where we talk about what we're eating on the homestead. And I was home this week, so we are eating on the homestead. Tonight, we're supposed to have lamb ribs that I was supposed to have already started in the crock pot, and I didn't. And I don't have a working pressure cooker because I got one, and it worked one time and stopped working. So we're going to talk about that brand on another show. Do not buy that brand. Their customer service was terrible. I returned it because it was an Amazon purchase. In fact, I need to probably get that to you at UPS today to go back. Anyway, so the last round of salsa, I think, is happening. We have enough hot peppers today to do it. I have been saving my tomatoes in the freezer and in the fridge to keep it so that there's enough. So I'm going to do one more batch of canned salsa with our hot peppers. And I got some sweet peppers at the farmer's market for that. And that'll make the house smell delicious all afternoon because I'll do that while roasting coffee today. I am going to do crock pot lamb ribs. I may not do them till tomorrow because they take 8 hours and it's 11 now, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's a 7 p.m. arrival time if I put them in the crock pot right now. So we're probably not going to do that. I might smoke them. Actually, I might just smoke them all night. That'd be fun. And then yesterday I went out to the garden and got bitten by fire ants and harvested what was there. And I ended up with, so I have this, I'll talk about it later, but I'll talk about it now, whatever. I'm out of sync, guys. So gardening, I have summer squash coming on, and we have squash vine borers here, but my strategy is like every few weeks, just plant more summer squash, and eventually the SVBs are gone. And I just plant them different places every time. So I have summer squash coming on, and I have late breaking cushaw and tromboncino squash coming on. So that's cool. And then I have Malabar spinach, and I have green, like sort of the tail ends of the green beans, and I didn't plant any more. And so I just sort of went out and picked a bunch of stuff and made a delicious garden saute all from here. And I just put dill and garlic and salt in it, and that was it for spices. And it worked out really well as a side dish to fish. So I think it's really fun on the homestead when you can just go out, pick stuff, and cook it. And that Malabar spinach made a really good salad base too. So I did a fresh salad with the last cucumber I found in the garden a few days ago that was a surprise cucumber, and a little bit of tomato and the Malabar spinach and a homemade dressing. So next segment is grow. This is where we talk about what we're growing on the homestead. And at this point, I have admitted that my fall is so scheduled with events and speaking engagements that I have to compromise what I'm doing on the homestead. And that is not why I moved into this lifestyle. But that is what is happening right now. So I am closing down garden beds, which means what I do is I pull everything out and put it in the compost. Actually, I put it in a big pile and it magically goes to the compost. And I'm pretty sure a redneck's involved in that second step. And then I like to put rabbit manure and some other things on the rows and then deep mulch it with wood chips. So we've got to go to Wood Chip Mecca and get wood chips for this and then tarp it for the winter and just let it go. And sometimes I get a tarp on there and sometimes I don't, and it's fine either way. But it's really just putting the beds to bed for the winter. And that same method is what I do to plant my garlic. And garlic's going to go in about 4 weeks. Like that's the one thing I've committed to for October is garlic will end up in the ground. So the same process of preparing the beds to go to bed is what we do to prepare the beds for garlic planting. And I've decided where that's going to be. I'm hoping to get some biochar in that row as well because it's not retaining moisture as much as I'd like it to. So we'll see. Still got to get a stupid rivet gun to put the stupid biochar kiln together. So I don't know. I'm going to actually probably harangue Tactical until he tells me which one to buy and buy it because he keeps telling me not to buy it because Nighthawk has one, but it has not materialized and I'm done waiting. So I'm either just going to go buy one or I'm going to ask him which one he wants me to buy. But either way, there's going to be a rivet gun here in the next week and a half so that I can do this thing. Now, I can make biochar in another way, but like I got the kiln for a reason and I want to like do video of it and some other stuff as we just go down that road. Lettuce looks great. I need to thin it still. And that means we'll get some October lettuce. I think I'm going to transplant some of those into pots so that Tactical can use them as demonstrations for his hydroponic system that he's going to show at Self-Reliance Festival. And then the late squash harvest is going to happen. So like over where the pigs were, they planted a bunch of squash. So Steve and Tracy have gotten a bunch of squash over, like winter squash over there, and then patty pan squash. So that's kind of cool. And then here, I planted some squash and squash just came back from last year's squash as well. And I let it go because it started coming up in the old bean rows. And I was like, that's fine. You can just like, whatever. Worst comes to worst. I end up with, green matter I can put in the compost. If you don't fruit, well, it's fruiting and there are squash. And so I got one cushaw so far off the garden, but it looks like we'll have some other ones. And the Malabar spinach, it's the best Malabar year I've ever had. I'm getting leaves that are the size like around that a softball is, and they taste like spinach and they act like spinach. And I can just go out there and pick them off. And then I come back a week later and there's a whole bunch more and there's vines everywhere of this stuff. So it's really the most successful year of Malabar spinach I've ever had. And what was done differently, I started the seeds inside, transplanted them outside, lots of rabbit poop. I'll say it again, lots of rabbit poop. And I think that extra like oomph of the fertility really helped this particular plant. Like sometimes you put a bunch of rabbit poop out and the plant's like, screw you, lady, I don't like it. Well, this one liked it. So what that tells me is it's a heavy feeder. The Malabar spinach in my aquaponics system is not as robust because that needs some worm castings or lots of rabbit poop as well. Anyway, it's going to go through the fall till the first frost, and then we'll be done with that. Unless I bring it inside, but I don't plan to overwinter the Malabar spinach, but I might try. I have this like sort of list of stuff I want to try because the cool thing about Malabar spinach is you can root the vine. And then I have the Forever spinach and it is going nuts. So I put that out last night too. So that's definitely going to overwinter. I really like that plant as a sort of over summer green that you can use. And then I'm having a resurgence of the Swiss chard that when it got hot, the Swiss chard told me that it was not happy and now it's happy again. So I really think a good layer of worm castings and rabbit manure in my aquaponic system, which is near the house, is in order. I'll probably commit to doing that before the end of October too, because that's the bed where I actually do grow things all winter long. If I can, unless it gets down to -5, in which case most stuff dies. But, I'll get celery off of that. I'll get green onions off of that. I'll get greens. I'll get herbs and that sort of thing all winter long. And it's kind of nice. It just grows really slow there. Next segment is Holler Neighbors and Community, where we talk about how we're interacting with each other here. And I'm going to the mag in Spencer, and I'm hopefully going to have a couple people jump in the car with me from the Holler Neighbors. That's the plan anyway, and that's going to be fun. It's going to be all of us getting out. Usually they go to the ones nearby, and I stay home because I can't go because I don't make time to go places too much. At this point, if it's not already on my schedule on a weekend, it's not happening. So for the rest of the year. So anyway, they're coming with, and we'll just ride share out there. So that's kind of cool. And then Saturday night, we're doing Holler Neighbor dinner, probably some game night. Like last time we played the World Without Rule of Law card game just to test it out. And we had some fun with that. And then we played Yahtzee. I hadn't played Yahtzee since I was a kid. So that's all happening. And that's just, I was like, we spent a number of months where I was so busy that we weren't doing a lot of Holler Neighbor dinners. And I was like, well, let's start doing that again. Cause that's how we keep in touch with what's going on. Next up, we talk about infrastructure. And that's where we talk about what we're building on the homestead. Tactical just wanted me to share this with you. Last week, I talked about how he's putting aluminum wire up as sort of a semi-permanent fence at the next door property. And between the wire and insulators for the section he just did is about $60 in materials for it to be there all the time. And for context, the two reels that he would have involved in running that with the braided wire we use is about $150. So it's actually costing less, except for that if you multiply that by all the paddocks, it would cost more. So his strategy is to do that everywhere where it's hard to run wire first, so that he doesn't have to run wire on the hard parts and he can move the sheep faster, but it's also not as expensive as you would think. So I don't know how long that run was, but I know which run he's talking about, and I've helped him string that run, and it involves hanging off rocks. So so he only had to hang off the rocks, once to get that done, or maybe twice. And now it's done. And as long as, the maintenance will be when branches fall on it, you have to deal with that. Or if things grow up through it that are causing it to short out, then there's some maintenance there. But it's a lot easier than walking the steep rocky cliff several times, like a minimum of 2, sometimes 3 times when we move the sheep, and then a minimum of 2, sometimes 3 times when we take it back out. Because yes, you can pull it through, but in some of these trickier areas, you have to kind of go do it. Just do it. Okay, our last segment before I take questions, so get your questions in, is finances. This is where we talk about the money on the homestead, and we have some early breaking news on the tracking we've been doing. First of all, we both find it to be a pain in the neck, but it's worth it. So we've gone through 3 bags of rabbit food for 30 rabbits this month. And Tactical thinks we're going to go through 2 more. I'm looking at the date thinking we'll go through 1.5. And that's about $100 total for feeding the rabbits. So we talked earlier about how the food bill is kind of the feed bill. The feed bill is our food bill. Well, here's how that breaks down. That is enough food for 2 livestock guardian dogs for 1 month. So it's $100 for the food for the livestock guardian dogs for 1 month. And that is about equal to what their dog food costs. But they're getting healthier food. So we're kind of on par. It's like $10 more for the dog food versus the rabbits. Is it worth the effort? I don't know. I'm just sharing the information as it comes in so you guys can make your own decisions. And that was my last segment. So I'm going to take the 2 questions I have. The first one I have isn't a question. It's from John Davis Sheeps. Hi, Nicole. Driving on a business trip listening, but stopped to comment as I have another call at noon, so probably he's not on anymore. Well, he talked about how they choose their genetics, and I'll just read some of these. For sheep selection for ewes, we look at teeth, alignment for top and bottom, FAMACHA score, udder conformation, black tail, black legs, not fur, but evidence of diarrhea and scouring. Okay, makes sense. Also, if they consistently don't have twins, they go to the butcher. Okay, that's a good one. So Bruni had 1. And she has had triplets before, so she's getting another chance. But yes, I want twins. And for rams, we look at all of the above plus dangly bits. on the bottom of the testicles. It should be large. That's where the sperm is and is a fertility indicator. Okay, fair. Anyway, that's helpful information. Faith wants to know, is there a way to grow more food for rabbits to cut down that bill? Yes. Okay. So what we're not doing is we are not rotating our rabbits through tractors, which would have probably cut that at least in half, if not down to 25%. And we can feed them hay, which is less expensive. So we have not fed them hay because we're not making time for it. It's literally just a wee problem. And that will change as we go into the winter. Tactical is in the middle of building a whole new rabbitry. Our rabbitry is not ideal for maintenance of the rabbits, so he's improving it, and I'm hoping that will help. Actually, I know it seems like, why would a rabbitry impact your feed bill? Because when it's easier to do the better feeding practice, then, that's what that is. If we're ever going to rotate them on tractors, I'm going to have to set it up, because he's not convinced he wants to deal with rabbit tractors. So I've got to figure out how to make a rabbit tractor, make the rabbit tractor, make it so the watering is not an enormous pain in the butt, and then do it, and then we'll do it. Anyway. Any concern with No, I have no concern about that. We raise our rabbits, and I've done it under advice of some people nutritionally. What we do is make sure that they get the whole rabbit, including the intestines, for vitamin mix, and then they do get some kibble to help just round that out. But I'm not concerned about that at all. Kaliki virus. I don't know how to say that. But anyway, okay. Faith says water does not keep out fire ants. They will clump. I know this from working in like hurricane relief, because you'll have islands of fire ants floating on the water when it floods. But I didn't think that fire ants would make a raft and cross a river. So I don't know what's up with I don't know how they got here. They just got here. And it was 2 to 3 years ago that the first ones were in the area. And it is what it is. We knew they were going to eventually get here, and they got here. And the only thing that's really going after them are those what are they? So I'm having the ADHD moment where you forget the word for armadillo. Armadillo. My mom always says armadillo. Armadillo. So, on the one hand, we don't really love having armadillos around. On the other hand, they eat the fire ants. So who knows? I'm going all in on the ones in my garden. I see fire ant hills around my property, and I'm like, yep, there they are. And I just don't step on them because they're very visible. But the minute they start getting into my stuff, like there's one in my food forest too. So like we just have this onslaught. So yeah, that's where we're at. Anyway, I hope you liked today's show. If you did and you want to support the work I'm doing, get your coffee at hollerroast.com. That's hollerroast.com. If you are a member, you have a discount code. If you can't find your discount code, send me an email. Also, you can become a member. Head over to Living Free in Tennessee to find out more about that. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.